Join with me for the reading of Scripture. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when people rose against us, then they would have swallowed us up alive. When anger was kindled against us, then the flood would have swept us away, the torrent would have gone over us, then over us would have gone the raging waters. Blessed be the Lord, who is not giving us as prey to their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is the name of the Lord, who has made heaven and earth. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Dylan. There it is. There it is. Can't take any credit for it. Gift of the Lord. What you may not know, and I've told some of you, it didn't really drop that much when I went through puberty, meaning it was already this low when I was a little kid, which means I was a weird little kid. What I did not tell you is that I have actually not preached, at least on a Sunday morning in a church, since February 14th, 2021. You probably all remember that weekend. Snowmageddon. It was that winter storm. I had 2 pipes bust. That was my last Sunday at City Church, which is where I got to know Io and Amechi and their wonderful family. And so I've known about this idea of the West Church for a really long time. But that was my last time to preach. So as I joked with Io in a text to him, my jumper may be a little rusty. We'll see how it goes. The reason I haven't preached since February of 2021 is I now work in corporate America. I work for a public accounting firm. It's a role and a job that I would have never have envisioned having, but I really, really enjoy it. My title is Director of People Engagement. The accounting firm is called Weaver. We're a national firm, medium-sized. I work with over 100 partners and senior managers and managers as an internal leadership coach. And I'd like to begin looking at this psalm by talking to you about something that regularly comes up in my coaching sessions with leaders at our public accounting firm. And my boss, our managing partner, who I've known really well for 10 years, said, Linc, I don't know, God may give you even more opportunities to preach. Once you come here, you're totally able to do that if you want to. In fact, he said, I'll tell you, you might even be better at it because you'll know what 95% of us are going through most of the time. Ooh, that's interesting. What I work on a lot in my sessions with our leaders is called emotional intelligence, or EQ. It's not IQ. It's not how smart you are. It's also not what I would call SQ, skill quotient, how competent you are at what you do. Because when you reach a certain level of leadership, for instance, an accounting firm, it doesn't matter anymore how smart you are. Doesn't matter anymore how good you are at the job, because you're now no longer responsible for the job. You're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And that's where emotional intelligence is so crucial. If I had to define it, I would say emotional intelligence is simply the ability to effectively engage with other human beings. And if you look at any EQ assessment, it's going to measure a number of different dimensions or competencies. One of them is always empathy. What is empathy? Empathy is being able to understand and share the emotions and feelings of someone else, even if you're not in the exact same situation that they're in. An illustration of empathy just came to me a few weeks ago when I was doing a group coaching session with some of our leaders. I said, here's what empathy is. It's when you see that guy, we all know this guy, under the bridge or on the street corner, And maybe they're smoking something, and they're talking to themselves, and they're not even aware of where they are or what they're doing. What empathy is able to do is imagine that if you, up until that point in your life, had gone through all the twists and turns that that person had gone through, that you had absolutely no control over. How functional or dysfunctional your family that you were born into was. What you saw in your home. What you experienced outside your home. What you were introduced to. Empathy can imagine if all that happened to him happened to me, that's probably where I'd be too. It's the ability to understand and share in the emotions and feelings of others, even if it's not your lived experience. Empathy is so crucial to understanding the Psalms because it's full of emotions. The Psalms are full of emotions, so you have to imagine so that you can understand and share with the feelings of the author. Psalm 124, which Dylan just read, I'm going to read to you again, but I'm going to read it through a translation called The Message, which is by a pastor who's no longer alive, one of my favorites, Eugene Peterson. This is poetry, so I want you to listen for things that are often captured in poetry, like repetition, reality that is illustrated by metaphor, and then finally a reminder at the end that kind of just sums it all up. Here we go. Here is the Message's translation of Psalm 124. If God hadn't been for us, all together now, Israel, sing it out. If God hadn't been for us when everyone went against us, we would have been swallowed alive by their violent anger, swept away by the blood of rage, drowned in the torrent. We would have lost our lives in the wild, raging water. But blessed be God. He did not go off and leave us. He did not abandon us defenseless, helpless as a rabbit in a pack of snarling dogs. We've flown free from their fangs, free of their traps, free as a bird. Their grip is broken. We're free as a bird in flight. God's strong name is our help. The same God who made heaven and earth. Repetition. All together now, Israel, sing it out. Reality. Rescue. Escape, symbolized by metaphor, the waters, the torrent, the flood, then the rabbit who's caught in a pack of snarling dogs, and the bird who is suddenly set free to fly, and then the reminder at the end. This psalm is all about how helpless we really are and who our help is. How helpless we really are and who is our help. I've learned as I've grown in coaching what it means to be a coach, the difference between executive or leadership coaching and athletic coaching. I've done a lot of athletic coaching. They're different. Athletic coaching is you tell people what to do. And if they do it, they're blessed. And if they don't do it, then they're going to run. That's athletic coaching in a nutshell. Executive coaching is not about telling people what to do. In fact, it's not at all about making statements. It's about asking questions. Hopefully thought-provoking questions that help people figure themselves out, who they want to be, what they want to do. Or for us, as followers of Jesus, what does that really look like? What does it look like to follow the one who not only lived and died and rose again for us, but Psalm 124 is a prayer he would have prayed. So understanding and sharing in the feelings of Jesus as he prayed this psalm. Here's 3 questions which will form our outline. What does helplessness feel like for you? What does helplessness feel like? What would it take for you to beg for help? That's the second question. What does helplessness feel like? What would it take for you in your life to beg for help? And then what would the signs of escape be if you were helped? How would you know that you had escaped? Have you ever had like a crazy real dream or / nightmare? I have a couple of recurring ones. One is I'm playing in a basketball game and I cannot do anything good. Every time I dribble, it goes off my knee. Sometimes I don't even have my pants on. It's constant turnovers. The ball squirts out of my hand, and I wake up, and what escape feels like is, yes, that's not true. That didn't happen. Have you ever woken up from a dream like that? Like, whew, I'm so glad that's not true. That's what escape feels like. And we'll talk about it some more. Let's go to the first question. What does helplessness feel like? 3 really quick stories. When I was like 4 or 5, I remember feeling helpless at the church picnic because I was in the Dover pool and I did not know how to swim, but my friends challenged me to touch the blue and white rope, and I accepted that challenge. And as I made my way closer to the blue and white rope, get up all on your tiptoes when you're in the water. It's awesome. I slipped, and I'm under. The last thing I see through the water as I take water in is my dad jump into the pool, and his huge Division I playing basketball arm reached around me, and I was helpless. Or many years later, the train trestle incident of the summer of 1995. This is when I was with 2 good friends that I had met on a Campus Crusade mission project the year before in California. They had come to Shelbyville, Kentucky to see me. And we thought we were just living free in Christ because we smoked cigars for the first time. Woo! And we found this train track that I had never been on before outside of Shelbyville. And we decided to smoke our Swisher Sweets while yes, sir, high quality cigars, walking down the train tracks. Well, it was getting a little late. It kind of got there, but that was good. It was getting to be late and sort of dusk, kind of dark. And we realized we found our way to a trestle. You know what a train trestle? It's a bridge. Train trestles don't have any like walls or just the track. Like, let's walk it. So we start walking along this trestle, and it starts to get dark. And we start to realize we don't know how far this goes. Are we halfway there? Are we a quarter of the way there? Are we 3/4 of the way there? And then it's like, what if a train comes? I mean, from what we can tell, which isn't much, this sucker could be 200 feet off the ground. So we pick up the pace. Helpless. It didn't happen. No train came. But what if it had? Final one, the same beach I met those 2 knuckleheads on that walked on the train trestle with me. Was an awesome summer, Southern California. The way I'd never been to the Pacific Ocean. So fun riding the waves on boogie boards or just body surfing. And so I took my family to Southern California a few years ago. I can't wait to show y'all Newport Beach. We're going to ride these waves. There's like a yellow flag out. I remember there being yellow flags in the summer of 95 when I was there, summer of 94. So Ellie, Julia, and Rachel, my wife, they're all, honey, those look pretty strong. Like, this ain't Galveston. No, come on. So I go out there. They're still waiting on the shore, and a big one's coming. I'm like, yeah, like, this is 25 years after I first rode these. And I get sucked back into it, and I just remember, everything in me trying to make sure my head didn't hit the sand. Helpless. That's what helpless feels like to me. What stories have you gone through? What metaphors speak to helplessness where you lose control? You have a need for rescue. Or, if you're familiar with AA, the first of the 12 steps, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Substitute anything you want for alcohol, because it can be anything. What do you feel powerless over? Anxiety? Anger? Achievement? You just can't stop accomplishing, but you never get what you're chasing. Bitterness? Blame shifting? I'm going in alphabetical order. Cynicism? Denial? Ego, excuse-making, jealousy, obsessions, pornography, the pressure to perform, a victim mentality, or what the author of the big book of AA himself calls, and I love this, stinking thinking. I'm powerless over my own stinking thinking. People in AA will often say, this is what your best thinking got you. This is what trusting in your best ideas got you. My wife likes to call stinking thinking spinning. Your mind just keeps spinning. And you can't get out. You feel powerless, that this is utterly unmanageable. I have to stop this, but I know I can't. This has to stop, but it just won't. Here's the good news, my friends. Ben Franklin was wrong. God does not help those who help themselves. God helps those who know they can't. In fact, I would say you will not find God until you are helpless enough to give up on trying to find yourself. Surrender is not something you can do until it's your only option. That's when we surrender, when we finally hit the bottom. Because you know who's always at the bottom? Jesus. Jesus is like a catfish, bottom dweller. You can't ever sink so low that Jesus hasn't sunk further to save you. So when we sing at the beginning, how I need you, did you know that the Christian life is not about needing Jesus less and less and less because you get your stuff more and more together? The Christian life is about needing Jesus more tomorrow than I did today. And more the next day than I did the day before that. It's not needing him less, but needing him more. So what would it take, second question, for you to beg God for help? I mean, really beg. Like that guy on the side of the street. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, any Enneagram aficionados out there? I'm a 2 and 3. Like I'm either a 2-wing 3 or I'm a 3-wing 2. 2 is helper, 3 is achiever. So you know who I am? I work my butt off to help people. That's me. You know what that makes it really hard to do? Beg to God for help. Because believe it or not, I am so much more comfortable helping than I am being helped. So much more comfortable being the giver than the receiver. I was on my way here, turning on Center off of Bissonnet. Right lane, I'm like, what is that in the road? And it's this huge gate like metal gate, just laying there right in the right-hand turning lane onto center. So I get over in the middle lane, and the stoplight's red, and so I sit there, and I'm like, I should move that. I'm going to move that. And I'm hoping one of y'all will see me move that. Because then I get to live up to my Enneagram 2 and 3-ness by working my butt off to help people. So while I'm sitting there, I'm going to do this. I wonder how heavy that gate is. Looks kind of heavy. I can move it. Another guy pulls up in a white truck and gets out and starts to move it. I can't let him do this by himself. So I pull over. I had the same idea. And I'm glad there were two of us because it took both of us. The sucker was heavy. We turned it over 3 times. I looked at him and said, man, I didn't know I was going to get a workout before church this morning. Awesome, you have people in this neighborhood who are willing to do that too. What would it take for you to beg to God for help? I'll never forget when I was a youth pastor, right out of seminary, one of the first sermons I preached. I said something like, turn to your neighbor and tell them, I don't have it all together. I don't have it all together. This was in a white middle to upper class church, full of people who at the very least were committed to convincing everybody that they had it all together. Had an 8th grade boy in that ministry that I was having lunch with later that week. And he said, that sermon, Linc, when you said, turn to your neighbor and say, I know I don't have it all together. My dad couldn't do that. What do you think we worked on for the next 5 years? As parents, what are we really seeking to give our kids? How can we expect our kids to desperately cling to Jesus if we don't show them how to do it? That means when you have a moment with your children or with your spouse, and about an hour later, you're really thankful it was not recorded on video. You, in your gratefulness that it was not recorded, go and own up to whatever you need to own up to and cling to Jesus. Because none of us have it all together. Eugene Peterson translates Matthew 11, 29 through 30 this way. This is Jesus speaking. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. It's a great line. The unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and rightly. Isn't that good? I totally got my notes out of order here. Apologies. There we go. All right, I'm good now. Third question. What would the signs of escape be? If you realized your helplessness, you begged to God for help, and he helped you. I use the illustration of you wake up and realize the dream isn't true. It would feel that freeing. Because he's such a good writer, and you're taught in preaching class, or at least I was, to never read really long quotes. But I just can't improve. It's a story by Henry Nouwen, and I think it's worth reading it. So I'm going to read it out loud to you. So humor me at the very least. The Flying Rodleys are trapeze artists who perform in the German circus. When the circus came to Freiburg 2 years ago, my friends Franz and Rennie invited me and my father to see the show. I will never forget how enraptured I became when I first saw the Rodleys moving through the air, flying and catching each other as elegant dancers. The next day, I returned to the circus to see them again, and I introduced myself to them as one of their great fans. They invited me to attend their practice sessions, gave me free tickets, asked me to dinner, and suggested I travel with them for a week in the near future. I did, and we became good friends. One day, I was sitting with Rodley, the leader of the troop, in his caravan, talking about flying. And he said, as a flyer, I must have complete trust in my catcher. The public might think that I am the great star of the trapeze, but the real star is Joe, my catcher. He has to be there for me with split-second precision and grabs me out of the air as I come to him in the long jump. How does it work? I asked. The secret, Rodley, the flyer said, is that the flyer does nothing, and the catcher does everything. When I fly to Joe, I have simply to stretch out my arms and hands and wait for him to catch me and pull me safely over the apron behind the catch bar. You do nothing? I said, surprised. Nothing, Rodley repeated. The worst thing the flyer can do is to try to catch the catcher. I'm not supposed to catch Joe. It's Joe's task to catch me. If I grab Joe's wrists, I might break them, or he might break mine, and that would be the end for both of us. A flyer must fly, and a catcher must catch, and the flyer must trust with outstretched arms that his catcher will be there for him. Do you hear the gospel in that? We get to fly. Jesus does the catching. But for Jesus to catch, you can't try to catch him. You have to let yourself be caught. And friends, that's hard. Why? Because it's hard to do nothing. In fact, this is a question that I work a lot in my coaching of clients at our firm on. Here it is. What do you do when you have nothing to do? Oh, this is about to get real. What do you do when you have nothing to do? Well, I'll tell you what you do, unless you're real disciplined and purposeful. You do whatever you usually do. It's what I do. So imagine I'm working with someone in the public accounting space, and during busy season, which lasts from 8 to 12 weeks, they will sometimes work 60 to 70 to even 80 hours a week. Then they get a vacation. But they go on that vacation, and if they have not taken extreme measures to plan what they're going to do to rest, you know what they're going to do? Work. Why? This is human behavior 101. If I have nothing to do and don't know what to do, then what I will do, if I don't think about it, will be what I usually do. One of the most powerful coaching sessions I ever had was with a senior manager in Dallas. And she said, Linc, why do I wear as a badge of honor the number of PTO hours I have? I said, what would it be like if you wore as a badge of honor the number, but it was because it was so low? She said, all I know is I'm going to take, it was MLK weekend. We got Monday off. I'm going to take Friday off. I got 4 days off. What are you going to do? And she kind of quoted Snoop Dogg from that Corona commercial. Best plans or no plans? Snoop, I disagree. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to open that laptop at 3 in the afternoon and check your email, make sure there aren't any fires to put out, and then 4 hours later, toilet bowl is flushed, and you're under a heap of work. You've worked for 4 hours, and you finally shut the laptop. This job is burning me out. No, it's not. You did this to yourself because you didn't have a plan. What do you do when you have nothing to do? It's a very important question to ask yourself. What would it look like for you to reflect back on a day where you had nothing to do and be proud of what you chose to do? It's convicting to think about, right? How many of us, we don't have anything to do, so we choose any number of things that we're not proud after the fact that we did? numb out, escape, keep working, get on the hamster wheel of achievement and accomplishment, whatever it is. Take extreme measures instead with Jesus and the Psalms this summer. Work harder to rest better. Doesn't that sound strange? You got to do it on the front end. Now, I'm going a little bit over time. I hope that's all right. First time back out of the gate, you know. Jump shot's not going to be firing on all cylinders. One of the things that I know IO as a preacher is personally committed to, and the West Church as a church is committed to, is seeing Jesus from Genesis 1 to Revelation 21. So I told you Jesus would have prayed this psalm. He would have been very familiar with this psalm. So he would have understood it and known it. He would know what it feels like to be almost overcome by the anger of someone else, the waters to pour over him, the need for escape. But think about it. My God, why have you forsaken me? He says from the cross. What is he saying? He's saying, God, I'm helpless. And you're not helping. Why are you not helping me? You know what God's answer is? So I can help everybody else. You know, son, like that criminal you just promised paradise? And those people who nailed those nails into your hands, and you just prayed for me to forgive them. Well, you know I can't forgive them unless I forsake you. I can't help them unless I don't help you. Son, this is going to feel like I do not know what I am doing. But I do. And by not helping you, I will be able to help the whole world. And that's the covenant we agreed on before time even began. Now, as beautiful as that is, I hope you find that beautiful, that God said no to Jesus so he could say yes to you. I'd like to close with what I think is a very uncomfortable corollary. And I kind of wrote this out, and I'm going to read it because I wanted to make sure I said it the way I wanted to say it. If this dynamic of asking for help and not being helped in order to help everybody else was true in Jesus' life, which I hope you agree it was, and if Jesus is the one we follow, which he is, or at least he should be, and if following Jesus, and what I mean by that, I had a friend I was playing golf with yesterday. It was super hot in the afternoon. He said, Linc, it's hotter than a prostitute in church on Sunday morning out here. And I said, well, you know, Kevin, if the church was actually more like Jesus, the prostitute would be pretty happy. Wouldn't feel guilty or all heated up at all. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm talking about a judgy church. Man, you need to find a real church. If following Jesus means slowly but steadily becoming more and more like him, which I'm going to try to prove it does, then why does it surprise us when God doesn't help us after he first helped us? What do I mean? The first time we cry out to God in our helplessness for help, and if you haven't done it today, I hope you will. The first time we cry out to God in our helplessness for help, what does he do? Oh, he graciously and speedily comes to our rescue. He helps, no matter how far down we've sunk. This is salvation. We are helpless. He's our help, and that's what this psalm is all about. Anne Lamott has a book on prayer entitled Help, Thanks, Wow. She said, these are really the three prayers. This is all you need. Help, thank you, wow. The gospel is a help, thanks, wow kind of thing. It's the announcement that what is true of Jesus is now true of you. You know why? Because you did nothing and he did everything. So when God looks at you, he no longer sees only you, but he sees you in his Son, which means He loves you as much as he loves his son. This would be like me loving you as much as I love Ellie, Julia, and Rachel. I love y'all, but not like that. But God, it's true. He is as for you as he is for Jesus. He is as committed to you as he is to Jesus. And you may already start to see where I'm going with this. Because having helped us in our helplessness by uniting us to Jesus, the Father is continually available to us, committed to helping us. But we must ask, help us how? Or to what end? And this is where the corollary truth to the gospel is quite uncomfortable. Because I would say that God is now committed to helping us become exactly like Jesus, who he has already called us to be. And I'll prove it. 1 John 4:16-17, Jesus' best friend says this: whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. And this is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. Let that hit you. The gospel is not just about believing in Jesus, but having believed in Jesus, becoming like Jesus. But you see what this means, right, in light of the theme of this sermon? What this means, I think, is that God is going to mysteriously do the same thing in and through us in a myriad of minor, less meaningful, but also still significant ways that he did in and through Jesus. Since his mission, his will, is for us to look like the one he sees us in. But here's what that means. He may help others by not helping you. Oh. He may help others by not answering your cry for help. Just like he did with Jesus. God helps you in your helplessness, but then he may not help, because he's actually helping you become more and more like Jesus. There's a bunch of paradox here. But is this not the life of sacrifice that Jesus calls us to? Is this not what it means to take up our cross, deny ourselves, and follow him? I'm not helped, but they are. That's a lot like Jesus. Are we only committed to the gospel so long as it feels like good news for us? Or are we willing to embrace a deeper mystery? The one that Jesus encountered on the cross. That for the gospel to be good news for others, it may feel like really bad news for me, because of what's required of me. I'm now united to the one who lost everything on purpose to win back the entire world. That's your ride or die. It means you might die. You might not ride. One of the things I love that West Church does, and I'll do this to close this, I told Io, this is very similar. The way you're ending your sermons is very similar to a coaching session. Because at the end of a coaching session, what I ask my clients is something like this. What do you now want to do in response to the conversation that we just had? My commitment to the client is for them to walk out of the session with something very clear that they're going to commit themselves to. So what does that look like here? I think if I remember correctly, we enter a period of silence where you reflect with the help of the Holy Spirit, what did God say to you today? What did God communicate to you today? What did you hear? Not just in the sermon, but in the whole service. And then, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about what he's said to you? And then finally, again, if I think I'm right, there's always three when a pastor comes up with it. Who are you going to tell? What did you hear? What are you going to do? And who are you going to tell? To help us with that, I'm going to read a poem. So this will start our time of silence, and then I'll let it go on for a couple of minutes. This is a poem by a friend of mine named Jonah Werner. So close your eyes and let this begin your time of silence. Unbeknownst to you and me, beyond the place of tyranny, there lies a love that holds us, and sure and constant watch. I pass a place of future crashing, and far beyond the tongues and lashing, there lies a blaze that's burning, never to be drenched. When people live and love beyond themselves, hearts betray this bitter world, and there's bound to be a breaking. But I can't sweat for better yet when all I have is manifested in who I am, who I was, and what I'm not mistaking. That this is freedom, living and loving hard, when guarantees are lewd and shard, and I can't rest on human souls because they're impractical and bruising. There's got to be more. There's got to be something deeper out there, and I hope that you look and you find. Because if people are being restored where vines and branches sever more, and never have I been so crazy, kick the doors to free me to say that I'm alive and I'm thriving still. I've lost my feet, but I won't lose my will. You can hurt, but you cannot kill. The raging fires of a man who's been caught by human lies time after time, who's been soaked and choked and wrung by compromise, who was once dead, but is now and still alive. Take 2 minutes of silence. Father, may your people hear clearly what you desired them to hear this morning. And may you give them grace to, in response, act in faith, not to earn your approval, but out of the freedom of already having it. And would you also grant them grace to tell others the ways in which you are shaping them, so that it might have a powerful impact in your world, particularly in A-Leaf, as the West Church seeks to transform this place. In your precious Son's name we pray. Amen.